Okay, so we're live. This is Richard Sachs, your host on Lost Arts Radio. It's really nice to be with you again. And we have a super exciting show tonight that'll be fun for me, I'm sure. And that's because it's about a subject that I really care a lot about called education. And I've been focused on that, really interested in its implications for my life and everybody else's since I was at least in junior high school, I had these imaginings of what a real school would be like as I sat there in incredibly boring classes, and an hour seemed like about a day. And so we were playing all these silly games to make the time go by with the other kids in class. And the thing was, I was interested in all the subjects, but not the classes, because they managed to find ways to make them all boring. And I think part of it was the idea that education had to be really hard, really unpleasant, complicated, hard to understand, so that you'd think it was really valuable. And it didn't work very well on me. I didn't think it was valuable because it was hard to understand. I just thought it was dumb, and the subjects were really exciting, and I wanted to get back into that. And over the years, I got more focused on what that would be like. And one thing I recognized was the best teachers seemed to be not the people who thought of themselves as teachers, but the ones who were the best perpetual students. And they were just sharing the enjoyment of their learning experience with the other people that wanted to come and be part of it. So there was this really amazing guy named John Taylor Gatto, whose videos you might want to watch on YouTube and other platforms, and they're all over the place. He's got some long, great lectures on history of education and things like that. And he's not doing too much in public anymore, if I understand it right. But one of his really great students named David Rodriguez is kind of carrying on the tradition that John Taylor Gatto was starting when he broke out of the New York City public education school system and said, wait a minute, why don't we do it like this? And had incredible insights. So I wanted to share that with you from David tonight, which is going to be great. And very grateful that David agreed to be on our show. And thanks for being here. I think this will be fun, David. So we'll see where we go.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I think the way that I'd like to start it, if it's okay with you, is go back before you got involved in all this stuff and before you even knew that you wanted to be focusing on educational work, and how you came to that, from whatever earlier point in your life you'd like to step forward so that it makes sense, and introduce people to who you are on a personal level, and then we'll get into the current work, and we'll talk about John too also.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in Northern California called Mount Shasta, and there's about 5,000 people in that town. And you grew up in a small town, so you just kind of live in that small area. There's like 3 traffic lights and just Smallville, so everybody's friendly, and it's that kind of nature and rivers and lakes and everything, playing football. And I was an athlete growing up. And what I realized is that I wanted to get out of that town. I saw how a lot of people stayed there, and I wanted to kind of go explore a little bit, as I had some family down in Fresno and Kingsburg in the Valley in California. And so my original goal was just to get out of Mount Shasta, and I did. I went and played football my freshman year of college, and then went back to got my associate's degree, and then went back down to San Jose for a business degree. And that was because, hey, it's a very general study, course of study. You don't know what you're going to do, so you do basic general business administration. And it was there where I started exploring opportunities. I've always had a kind of a knack for maybe sales and just dealing with people and interpersonal relationships. And then as I started to study, I started a couple businesses, and then I started to learn about what truly successful people do, and they leave a legacy. They get money out the way, and money's just a little side thing to keep people busy, but ultimately we have a life to live. So I spent some time, I got involved in Christianity for a while and really was, searching for the truth. And then I became an English teacher in Korea at a high-performance high school, and saw how the school dealt with these students. And these were, quote, difficult students, but they used a vocabulary, phraseology using, you have to focus on the heart of the student. So rather than jam this curriculum into the kid, they actually allowed some self-direction, some actual empathy, some customization, like just find out what they're interested in, and kind of, you can use that as a way that they can learn. They can, become friends, and they can trust you, and like, they'll have a good life, and they'll be excited about learning again. And that's where I started to realize, if I had $10 million in the bank, or money was no longer an issue effectively in my life, what would I like to do? And I'd like to empower young people. And that's about the time when I started to dig deeper, and I learned about John Gatto and some of the other people, Charlotte Iserbyt. And I said, yeah, the school system really was boring, as you mentioned. And once I found out that that was intentionally designed that way, it took me some years to really fully digest it. I'm still digesting it, because such a hard pill to swallow, that some people decided to create a system which created people that could not think for themselves. They just wanted obedient people. And so that was kind of my essence up into getting the education business and education world. And, just being curious, perpetually asking questions. And, for myself, like, I was kind of a question asker, growing up, and that caused problems with my family or with like authorities. And I never got it. I was like, why can I not ask you? Like, if somebody tells me a fact, I'm like, okay, where did you get that fact? Right. Rather than say like, okay, yeah, it's a good point. I should double check my facts. They're like, oh, you don't believe me? You're like doubting me? I'm like, no, I just want to know where you got this information, because if you're giving me falsified information or skewed information, then it changes the whole context of the conversation. Right. So, I mean, that's kind of the build up to it. And then I just learned that there's better solutions out there. There's ways to go about it. And some of the great work of Buckminster Fuller and Gatto, of course, was that he said every child's a born genius. The challenge is that they get de-genius trying to please their teachers and please their parents. And I said, okay, I can agree with that, Mr. Fuller. And then Pablo Picasso said every child's a born artist. And then they lose that artistry as they age. So these great minds, and there's a lot of great minds who've had those kind of quotes. So I said, okay, if that's true, if every child is genius or artist or brilliant, then it is a crime against them to force this system upon them, when I know other solutions exist outside of it. So also, one of my mentors, a really successful businessman, he said, find an injustice that's worthy of you spending your life trying to correct. And I thought that was really impactful, because I was curious, like, where is the mentorship? Where is the leadership? Where are the people that can show you the light, and not try to like force it upon you, but say, hey, here's the options of what you can do for your life. And it's up to you what you want to do, based on your values and beliefs, these kind of things. And it's your life. It's up to you what you want to do. You can play small, you can play big. You don't even have to play at all. You can sit in a monastery and just go, be off in nature, whatever you like to do. But the realization that this is my life and this is your life. And if you're listening or watching, this is your life, so you have a chance, you have an opportunity to create something, and there is no normal way to do stuff. That's the other part of it. Like, they say there's a million ways to skin a cat, or some, metaphor or analogy like that. It's like, right. There's a million ways to live a life. And my philosophy is that there's 7 billion types of intelligences. And that's because there's 7 billion types of people on Earth. And there's, work by Howard Gardner, who said there's like 8 types of intelligences. And I thought that's better than 2, right? Versus just literacy and math, which are like the main things which right. people get shoehorned into. And if you're not good at that, then your life is going to be doomed, which is complete false, true lies. So that's kind of the build-up of just a small-town guy, and wanted to live a life just like you. You're doing great work, and that's my attempt, also my intention. And it seems like young people have the power, and it's up to us adults and leaders to show them that you do have great potential, and here's some of the options, and go out and create a great life if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, so in Korea, were you teaching in English or Korean?
Yep. So I was teaching English, and they actually learn a lot of English in their schools, but they don't have a natural or a native English speaker there. So it's kind of like a real treat to have them there. And they're all like great, grammar, study students of it all. but actually having the freedom. And I don't know if you've studied other languages. I learned a little bit of Korean. I speak more Spanish than Korean. But just after you learn the book, then when you actually get dropped out on the street or you're speaking to a native, again, this self-conscious, this fear of making mistakes, again, coming from schools, in my opinion, but it's you feel like you're going to be judged or you're going to be thought of less if you make mistakes in speaking another language, and that's not the case either. But yeah, I was teaching them in English, and it was really an amazing experience over there.
Wow. So how long did you do that? Until what year?
It was about, it was 2008 to 2009, so it was about a little less than a year.
Okay. And then what happened after that?
Okay, after that, I got recruited into a biotech company because the chairman of this nonprofit and this youth leadership organization, he said, "What are you doing out here in Korea?" And I said, I sold my business back in San Jose, and I just wanted to explore and seek truth and find out what's going on. And he said, "Okay, well, you want to go to New York?" And I was like, "Okay, what's in New York?" He said, "Well, we need an English speaker out there for the biotech company." I was like, "Okay," and that was like 4 or 5 months after I'd been in Korea. So he's like, "Yeah, we'll get you ready." And the next year, I went to New York working with this biotech firm dealing with plant stem cell technology, really exciting technology. I was in New York for about 4 months, and then the company was having trouble, and they sent me back to San Mateo, and I was out here. And then I started just to kind of realize what I want to do with my life. I mean, there's still pursuit of truth and, forgiveness, great things in Christianity, but I just didn't feel like it was truly empowering me. I think there was another agenda to use my life force for whatever agenda it was. And it wasn't like bad people, but, the Bible itself has some, questionable things in there that I couldn't put my life on. I'm looking to put my life on something that's rock solid, as it says in the Bible, built instead of versus a foundation of sand, a foundation of rock. And that was empowering people and understanding the goodness of children and all the great things they can do, the creativity, the resourcefulness, the persistence, the sincerity. I could really get excited about living a life like that, to empower those people and not trying to convert people to save them from eternal hellfire and these kind of things. But actually just, hey, you're free. You can pursue it if you want. And there's no agenda that I have. I just want you to be happy, fulfilled, because this world is in need of inspired leaders and integral people. And young people, they want to do that. Young people, they want to be useful. They want to have meaning and purpose in their life. And if we can help them realize that at a young age, they're going to be doing great things. So anyways, I changed up over here, and then just always pursuing some stuff in sales. And then I took a course called Landmark Forum, which is some transformational work, and really useful. And they had a few courses that I went to. And in one of the courses, I took this program called the Self-Expression Leadership Program. Really empowered me to do a project for 4 months, and they would support me and give me some guidance and coaching. And what happened is I started this event. I started the Education Options Expo in 2014 because I wanted to empower parents to show them there's other solutions out there besides compulsory government schooling. You have all these different types of schools. And so I did that for a few years here in San Jose. That's when I started my YouTube channel, put up some of the speeches, inviting speakers from around the country to come and share the respectful models of learning that they have. One of them is on YouTube for free. You can watch a movie. It's called Summerhill 2008. I highly recommend that movie, showing about a model that's been around for 90 years. And then I was actually doing the research because I wanted to find out what model I wanted to build my schools. I knew that was my new dream, was to build schools around the country, around the world, and empower these adults to allow freedom for their children so that they can maximize their potential and just love life. Life is so precious and life is so amazing that they don't have to be forced in there. And so that's what occurred then. And actually, part of that course I took with Alternative Education Resource Organization, I was in New York for a conference, and I reached out to John Gatto, and I said, hey, I appreciate your work, and I have a proposition for you. I'd like to help your name go on forever, because I'm tired of seeing these schools named after Horace Mann and Elwood P. Cubberly, all these guys who are part of the system to bring in the compulsory school system. I said, I would like to see a library with John Gatto on it, or I would like to give out an award after John Gatto. So anyways, I flew out there and made the proposition. He's like, yep, he signed this document for me. And then his wife asked me to republish to publish a new book. And I was like, okay, let me think about it. And I got back to him a few weeks later, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And they said, we were thinking about it. We don't want you to publish a new book. We want you to republish his life's work, The Underground History of American Education. And I said, oh, well, that's an honor and a opportunity and a privilege and a challenge. So and that was in 2014, and then we got it finalized in 2015. I just released volume 1 of that book in 2017, and we're going to have 2 more volumes on that. And then, so that's kind of going simultaneously with what's going on with the Education Options Expo. There's another legend out here called Wes Beach. He started at the Beach High School, and what he does is he graduates students early. And I said, Wes, how long have you been doing this? 25 years. Wow, how many students have you graduated? 1,500 students. And how are your students doing? He hands me 2 books. I said, great. I read the books that he wrote and documented the success of his students. So he's a huge inspiration also to effectively what my philosophy now is, my Valor Academy. I'm the principal of this virtual school, which focuses on apprenticeships. Valor Academy says the world is the classroom, and anything you can learn from can be a teacher. So rather than just limiting it to buildings primarily, I mean, you can go to nature, and nature has a lot to teach us, and the ocean and rivers and all these untapped resources, local businesses, and just so much opportunity to learn. And so I interviewed him as well. His interview is on my channel, Education Options TV, and just kind of get clear on the direction I'm going. And that's kind of a little bit about where we're at now, and basically doing various events around the country. I spoke at Dana Martin's event. Dana Martin's a great radical unschool champion for decades. Right. I spoke at her conference in May in New Hampshire, and in Acapulco in February. Jeff Berwick's a phenomenal conference there. And now I have a homeschool leader training workshop in North Carolina in about 2 or 3 weeks. I'm flying out there. So just wherever the opportunities come, to share some of these insights, what we're going to share, on the show today, because people feel something's wrong with the school system and they don't know what to do. And so John Gatto thankfully dedicated his life to uncovering the mysteries of the school system and at the same time empowering his students. And so, in a way, there's many of us who are taking the baton of that legacy of self-direction and unschooling, as it's also known as, where you can just go and create the experience that you prefer, and nobody owns you. Nobody has any rights over you unless you give them those rights, but you're a free individual, and there's nothing more precious than your life and your mind and your emotional life and your spirit. So I'm here to do that, and help parents realize this if they haven't for their kids, and let the good times roll effectively.
So do you want to, just as a foundation for where we're going to go with this, do you want to tell people where the current public education system came from? Because I don't think very many people really focus and think about that very much.
You're right.
They have their kids in it, but the kids are getting more input from that system every day for 12 years than they are from the parents usually, especially if the parents are really struggling to spend all their time working and everything. And to understand what impact that's having on society, I think it would help to know where it came from, because it didn't always exist. Right? You
are, very, very astute to say that, because a lot of parents don't realize it came from a military country called Prussia back in the 1800s, and they had the first compulsory school laws, attendance laws, enforced in 1819, and the specific purpose as
in the U.S., right?
What was Prussia was 1819. The U.S. was Massachusetts, 1852.
I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So Horace Mann brought that idea over from Prussia, effectively Germany, and the reason the Prussians created this system is that they wanted obedient soldiers, because they had just lost a battle to Napoleon, the Battle of Jena, Jena, and after you lose a battle and you lose money, you lose men, you get together at the war room and you say, hey guys, what's going on? Why did we lose? And they said, we commanded the soldiers to walk straight into the bullets, and they wouldn't walk into the bullets. So it's like, okay, so we got to figure out the system. And that's what they said. They want to create a system of schooling that trains the kids to not even be able to imagine to do anything other than what their school teacher would approve of. And so now, at that point, they were able to walk in a line straight into bullets firing, because now they've been trained, they've been drilled, and it was that 12 years of school that allowed that to be drilled into them. So that's what Gatto is so valuable for, in my opinion, among many things, to reveal that the root of this issue is the compulsory part of schooling. So just for your listeners and viewers, Gatto's not against schools. I'm not against schools. We are for voluntary attendance schools, but we're not for compulsory attendance schools. There's no other organization where you mandate attendance. So that's where it came from, early Prussia, and then 1852 in Massachusetts, and every few years it was passing, and it didn't get all 50 states, I think, until it was like 1920, 1922. So it wasn't this great, amazing gift to humanity that everybody's on board and say, yeah, bring compulsory schooling to my state. No, there was resistance. They had to force kids to go to school under bayonet in Boston because the parents were resisting. So that's the crux of the matter, is mandatory attendance, and that's how they get their money. So it is a business. It's
so before the mandatory education, which it sounds like was passed into law state by state by state, and it brings to mind, all right, what kind of organization did they have pushing it in every state? How were those coordinated? But before that, the current understanding is, instead of saying, we're going to force your kids to go to school, we're going to say, instead, we're going to have free education for all the kids. Yeah, you're not allowed to not take it, but it's this wonderful gift we're giving you. And it makes people think that before that started in all the states, which most people can't imagine now, the kids must just have been terrible and all really stupid and not know anything and stuff like that. What was it like before compulsory education in the U.S.? How did the kids grow up and learn things?
Yeah, you can take a look at Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, that book that he wrote, but literacy was actually very high. So, there was freedom, there was religious freedom, you could read the Bible, there was a very popular piece of literature and work that people were reading, and it was an agrarian society, and this is what we should all be reminded of. The American dream is not being rich financially, it's being free. It's having liberty to do as you wish, and then to have your own independent livelihood. So you don't have to become this multimillionaire, but if you're able to set your own schedule, whether you're a cobbler, blacksmith, a farmer, a chef, a baker, whatever you do back in those days, you set your own schedule. You're not a serf, you're not an indentured servant or a slave. You choose your schedule and you live your life, and you have babies if you want, and build a family and get some land and plant some crops, and you live, freely. And that's what the American dream was, to come out here, get some land, it was dirt cheap, and build a life that, you can hopefully have your kids be, better or in a better place, when you pass away. But
that was actually real national security in a lot of different ways too, right? Because everything was being produced right there. There wasn't another country that became a bottleneck in supplying some vital material that could then dictate policy to the government or something. It was all literally in the hands of the people because they were producing everything that was needed.
Correct.
That philosophy that the people could, be the ones that basically the country belonged to doesn't really mean anything unless they produce what they need.
That's right.
And then we were taught that that's inefficient, and we should have almost nobody involved in farming and manufacturing anything.
Yes, that's true. The self-reliance aspect of American life in those years was significant. If you didn't build it, there was nobody to build it for you. There was no government welfare because it was just land. It was just, bare land. So if you wanted something, you better build it. Yeah. And so that creates that persistent, that strong will, the desire to help your neighbors out, to trade, to barter, because I can help you, you can help me. There isn't this giant organization which is stealing money in the form of taxes from other people and saying, yeah, we're going to dish it out, take it from these people and give it to these people.
Well, there were no income taxes before 1913, right? Right. And the government was, in fact, building Washington, D.C. and everything was accomplished without any income tax. And the government was making money from trade tariffs, if I understand correctly. Mm-hmm. Which actually helped everybody in the country, because if it was cheaper or at least equal to buy something that was produced locally, then that created this huge self-sufficiency and people had skills to make everything. Now the skill is to go do what you're told, more or less, right?
That's right.
And all the good jobs are in destroying the world more, for the most part.
That's right. People have been so confused now, Richard. They're chasing money and they forgot about love. They forgot about courage. They forgot about empathy, patience, harmonious relationships, these things which you cannot put a price tag on. And a lot of it has to do with compulsory schooling, where for 12 years they confuse the children and instill statist type values from the U.S. and the local city, county, and they basically take the loyalty, the natural loyalty your child has to you as a parent, and then they shift that to the state. And we can talk about it later on, but it's like in other like Soviet Russia, they turn the kids against the parents. So it's like, oh, if your parents aren't supporting the czar, then you have to rat on your parents.
Sounds like now.
Yep.
In America, anyway.
Yeah. That's probably the direction it's going. And you and I spoke a little bit about this, but dissenting voices are not allowed. And as a little side note, I do have some Vietnamese friends. I have some Chinese friends. And in two separate conversations, I was asking about their countries. I said, so, are you guys allowed to get together and gather for religious reasons? And they said, yeah, we can gather like 3 or 4 people, but we cannot talk about the government. If we get together with like 4 people talk about the government, then, we can be arrested.
Where was this? Who was telling you this?
This is 2 friends I had some years ago. One was from Vietnam. One was from China.
Yeah, got it. Okay. That's certainly true now.
So that's what's happening now. That's what this, the NSA and all these programs that Edward Snowden released and Bill Binney, these NSA whistleblowers, and they want you to be in fear. And so the cure is just be absolutely courageous. And there's a great video also by Larkin Rose called The Tiny Dot, which just shows how we outnumber these people that think they're superior than us by like 1,000 to 1. We far outnumber them. So it's really just galvanizing ourselves, locking arms with each other and saying, hey, I got your back, you got my back, and being courageous because, we're not going to be rats. We understand we own our life, we own our body, and the state is the bully. The people that are stealing our money, the people that are forcing us to do stuff, those guys are the bullies, not people that are trying to raise crops in their front yard. Like in LA, you can get fined for having a garden in your front yard. It's like, this is insane, man. People
have gotten arrested for giving food to homeless people and stuff like that now too. They didn't have permits,
That's right. Gathering rainwater.
Yeah.
Who do you guys think you are? So we're going to turn it around with the next generation, I believe, Richard. And I'm excited to get into some of that and let parents know that it's not just the curriculum, because you might have heard the buzz about the curriculum, Common Core curriculum. The last 5-8 years, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Common Core math and all these just terrible ways to compute math and these things. So that is true. The new curriculum is terrible. However, that's just a symptom of the problem. That's just the fruit. And we're talking about the root, the compulsion, the state, the organization. Let me give you an example. Imagine if McDonald's was in charge of the school system. What would the classrooms look like then? Well, we'd have the founder, Ray Kroc, on the wall, and the current presidents up until date will say, yeah, those are the good guys. And then they give us all these, lessons on how, the French fries with preservatives, these are good for you. And the bread with all the preservatives, this is good for you. And the ultimate goal of their school is for you to become a franchise owner of McDonald's. But if you can't become a franchise owner, you can become an employee and you can do the...
Exactly. So and you'd have happy lessons, too, instead of just regular ones. Yep,
that's right. Teach you to be happy, work in the fry area and flipping the burgers. And this is not to, demoralize anybody who works at these places. This is an example to show you whoever is in charge of this organization. I'm talking about in the U.S., there's 50 million kids inside the school system. Globally, it's estimated at 600 million kids. So just in the U.S., in California, I think it's about 6 million kids. So if you're in charge of that many young people and you can determine what type of content goes inside their mind, you can shift society. And that's what they're doing. They have these giant plans for a global government. They want to rule everybody. They want to, chip everybody. And it's like, I'm not going to sit around and watch you guys do this. We have the internet and there's courageous people out there like yourself and John Gatto, Jeff Berwick and Larkin Rose and these guys who I respect that are speaking truth regardless of what the consequences are, because we're free humans and humanity is what matters. People, what matters, earth even, plants and vegetables.
Yeah, for sure. Two questions that come up right away with the practical application of what you're talking about. You're talking about kids mostly from K through 12, right? That's right now what you're looking at, because that's the most compulsory part. And they're trying to extend that downward into preschool and have compulsory free preschool so you don't get any radical ideas before you're learning to talk and stuff like that. So the question is, first of all, when you're trying to present these ideas of a really different kind of education, how much resistance do you get from the parents of the kids?
Well, it depends on how much personal research they've done. And if they've done none, then I have to be a little bit kind of more gentle. And my mother actually is a retired school teacher, and I have family members who are in the school system now as teachers and principals. So definitely makes for interesting family reunions, and I love these people. You know what I mean? I want to let them know it's not you who is like the bad guy. It's the system of coercion. It's an institution. So in terms of communicating, I rest my hat, the foundation, on the mandatory attendance part. So I let them know I would never mandate you to be anywhere. I would never forcibly put you in a building for any amount of time, let alone 12 years during the most formative years of your mind. And a lot of parents don't know that you can be fined, at least in California, up to $2,000 and put in jail for a year if you have 3 unexcused absences.
Whoa, so, I didn't know that.
Yep, that's in the California Educational Code. So
California is really leading the way in these things, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it is. It is so far behind what people want. But there's, as you know, status agenda, control agenda, and parents don't realize. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I said, well, have you ever heard of a truancy officer? And they're like, yeah, sometimes you get robocalls. Oh, your daughter was not at school today, this and that. The reason is that the districts get money from the state based on ADA, which is called average daily attendance ratios. So that's what they care about. They want your child's butt in the seat so they can say, is Johnny here? Johnny's here. Is Susie here? Yep. Good.
So the system is all controlled with money. is what you're saying. The schools are paid for it.
Absolutely. And guess what? The largest union in the country is the Teachers Union, the National Education Association, followed up by the American Federation of Teachers. And if you ever seen any of the documentaries of what happens when, let's say, an ambitious young person comes through and says, hey, I'm going to change the school system. Well, they have to go through the Teachers Union. They say, nope, we like it. We need our pensions, where we need higher wages. And they basically bargain all these things based on a compulsory system. So, hey, I believe if you want to unionize in a voluntary way, that's fine. But you are forcing kids to be there, and then on the other side of it, you're forcing homeowners in that local county to pay for it through property taxes. And this is like just this incredibly complex and sophisticated system where now you have all these financial interests that nobody wants to give up anything. Well, what about the teacher's pension? What about us? Well, I thought this is about the kids. Isn't this about the kids? Well, they say that on the outside, many of them. But even if you look at the undercover reports of Veritas, that's Veritas, he found these teachers, many of them don't care. And these book publishers, it's just about the money. So it is a huge financial system. Over $600 billion in the U.S. in the K-12 public system.
Well, so if you're in danger of going to jail, if your kid doesn't go to school, how are you telling people they could deal with that if they don't like the kid being in school?
So in some ways, you got to play the game, right? Because the state is the bully. They're the mafia, in my opinion, in their tactics. So homeschooling is legal in every country right now. So you go to your local homeschool association, you say, okay, what do I have to do? I mentioned North Carolina. North Carolina has pretty strict rules, but basically you got to file this piece of paper that says, okay, here's the name of my homeschool. I'm the administrator. You got to send them a copy of your high school diploma, your GED, and you have to keep attendance records, and you have to keep an instruction plan. But how West Beach has been doing it the last 25 years in California, God bless him, he lets the people know, my school, Beach High School, just like Valor Academy, the attendance policy is that the world's a classroom, so they're always in class. And the curriculum is whatever they decide that they're interested in, that's the curriculum. So he kind of puts it in that framework, and he said, no one's ever come to my home and said, okay, let's see your attendance records, let's see your curriculum. It's basically a lot of mind control to trick the people that you have to obey us because we're the state and we're superior than you. Whereas, back in the day, the government would fear the people. Now people fear the government. So that's the reason we're under tyranny in some ways, pretty abundantly. But so you do want to play the game at some degrees. But at some point, like California with forced vaccines, at what point do you say, okay, the government says I cannot have a religious exemption, I cannot have a personal exemption, I cannot have a belief exemption. The only exemption is a doctor exemption. It's like, forget that, man. This is my baby. This is my child.
They also make it extremely unlikely that a doctor would ever give you the exemption because they can lose their insurance. Ultimately, maybe even their medical license if they start, endangering humanity by giving exemptions. So yeah, it's pretty tight. But and they tried to make that in California cover homeschooling too, and they didn't quite get it yet. But
they are going to do whatever they can to stamp out homeschooling, and they're going to have trouble. Homeschoolers are fierce. They're passionate. They realize what's going on, and it might be too late for them because they let homeschooling go on for the last 2 decades or so, 3 decades, letting everything become legal. And it's like kind of the genie's out of the bottle in some sense, especially with the internet. So there's all these testimonials, all these successful examples of people who've actually made it through without traditional forced schooling, through the homeschooling pathway. But I think at some point they're going to try to clamp down on homeschooling, and it's just not going to work. They're going to try to use fear in the media. Yeah. But however, some people are getting kicked off YouTube, getting kicked off Twitter, so they're getting their free speech.
This is a big issue right now. The censorship on social media is really intense. There are thousands of people losing their channels, and Google and other search engines that are allied with it have become not search engines but indoctrination machines. And it's getting really intense. In fact, literal book burning started a couple days before we're having this show, and Amazon is starting to ban large numbers of books that are not acceptable, just kicking them off Amazon. So that's just started. I thought pretty interesting.
Yep. Yeah, that is very interesting. And I don't know how they're going to do it with archive.org or the Gutenberg Project, which are some kind of open source or some ways to store these digital books. But yeah, once you're the 800-pound gorilla or the 8,000-pound gorilla, you can do whatever you want. And Amazon is definitely that. So is Google. And so that's why it's quite alarming. So some of the hope that I have is that there's other technologists and visionary techno entrepreneurs, crypto techno entrepreneurs who are looking to decentralize the internet. I just learned of a project called the Nexus Project, which they're trying to create this new infrastructure, decentralize a new internet that can't be shut down. That's very interesting, I find. And, I'm learning about these things, but their plan is out. That's what I would say. Thanks to the work at tragedyandhope.com and Carol Quigley at Georgetown University, who revealed, the actual plans for these guys. And I don't think they planned on having the internet disrupt them in such a huge way. So that's why I think more than ever we got to speak our truth if we can. If you have a message, speak it, and be strategic if you need to, but make relationships around you and do not be in fear, because it is psychological warfare. It truly is psycho warfare.
So as far as the kids are concerned, you're really encouraging homeschooling, right? Because that makes it possible for them to do these virtual programs through either Valor Academy or the stuff that Ron Paul's working on, or other people that are putting out these virtual educational systems that are really flexible and open. And to do that and not have trouble with the legal system, it starts with getting official approval for homeschooling for your kids. Is that right?
Well, that's part of the process, but more important is mom and dad, whoever's doing the homeschooling, together ideally, if you get spouses on the same page, or if mom needs to make some girlfriends with other moms, or dads make some friends with other guys. If you guys link up, 3, 4, or 5 families and say, hey, we're going to homeschool and we're going to inspire and empower our kids. We don't care what the state says. They're going to be basically unstoppable, because the state can only use so much resources to ruin one family's life. But if there's little groups, little pods of families out there, they can't do anything. They don't have enough resources to pay the cops, to pay the investigators, to pay all these, whoever it is, CPS, to go out there and enforce all this stuff. So it's all really changing the beliefs and the worldviews.
Isn't that getting back in a way to the idea of, before any of this compulsory education stuff started, there was an in-between stage between when the kids were just helping on the farm and learning in real life, but then some communities started their own schoolhouse, and the families in the group helped run it, and maybe they chose a teacher to do some of the work, but all the parents were involved. That was kind of an intermediate stage before the compulsory thing started. It was an actual school building, but it was kids of all ages together, and it was doing whatever the community thought was good for them. And it sounds like it's almost getting back to that, with a group of parents doing homeschooling. Maybe they don't have the one-room schoolhouse, but they've got, whatever they decide works for the group.
Yeah, the one-room schoolhouse, where you have different ages mingling with each other. The 8-year-olds learn from the 12-year-olds, the 12-year-olds learn from the 16-year-olds. Yeah. And it's like this, we respect the people above us. And maybe not like the adults, but like the teenagers a few years above us. We're like, oh, what are those guys doing? And then under a voluntary environment, a safe atmosphere, it's like, oh, you're building this? I want to see. Okay, come on, you can come help. And it's that unifying energy. Whereas in K-12 compulsory schools, it's like, you have the 9th graders against the 10th graders. It's this very divisive type thing, and that's all strategically designed that way so that you will not create allies. And this is why Gatto says that teaching is a function. It is not a profession. So anybody you can learn from has somebody that has something to teach you can be a teacher. It doesn't have to be some, license, as we're talking about, the medical license or whatever these licenses that the state just says, okay, pass this test and now we give you a license. And I can say that because I was a licensed insurance agent for like 10 years and licensed home inspector. And it's just like the tests have nothing to do with the actual work. It's just this made up kind of fairyland.
Well, it is a control mechanism, though, because once you have a license, it can be taken away.
That's right.
So you can be told exactly what you're allowed to do.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Now, like medical doctors who say anything true about health, they can lose their license, or if they try to give the exemptions you were talking about, stuff like that. Because they're licensed, they're not free to say what they actually want to say. Sure,
yeah, and then they're part of the American Medical Association, and dentists part of the American Dentist Association and the California Association, and a lot of these are, funded by, Rockefellers back in the days as well, and they try to leverage it so that, they won't have homeopathic, natural path type solutions. Mm-hmm. So in terms of like the first step for parents, I would say step one is you have to define what education means to you, because the politicians say, hey, everybody needs a quality education. We're like, yeah, I agree, everybody needs a quality education, but what is that? Is it a 4.0 GPA? Is it a perfect SAT score? Because I don't think it's those two. I think it's identifying your values that you want to live your life by, learning how to be courageous, learn how to express yourself, communicate, and all these things which lead to you creating a good life for yourself. So that's why I would say step one, mom and dad, identify what education means to you, and then identify what success means to you. If you want to get wealthy, then get wealthy. If you want to be, in a tent, fishing by the lake, and that's success for you, then do that. But do not let some stranger indoctrinate your child with some strange values that go against your own home values, your family values. And so if mom and dad can just get a few ideas there, mm-hmm. then do the paperwork, but then meet other parents. And so this is where mom and dad are going to this is why I do training with parents, because a lot of the work is through the parents. The kids get it. The 5-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 10-year-old, they're like, what do you want to do today? Let's do it all. You want to go to the library, the museum, outside, inside. They want to do it all. But mom and dad are like, ooh, what if Johnny, what if he doesn't diversify? What if he can't do algebra? What if he can't do, science? And they have all this schooling mentality that they got from 20 years ago that, of course, it was compulsory and it's not, irrelevant. And, in real life, maybe you can relate. Nobody's ever asked me to see my GPA or my transcript from high school. No one's asked to see my college degree. Nobody gives two bits about that. They want to know, are you a nice person? They want to know, are you a team player? Are you coachable? Are you humble? Do you learn to get better? Do you personal improvement? These kind of things, and a few other. But it's like nobody cares about these grades. So it may get you in the door for some level. Let's say you're a Harvard or Yale graduate. Oh, he's a Harvard, Yale. Let's give him an interview. But then if you're in a job interview or a whatever type of interview you're in for, then they see who you are. They see, okay, is this person, do they have, personal hobbies, social hobbies, these kind of things, or is it just paper? They just, they think they graduate from Harvard, so they think they're superior, and they're like, oh, better than everybody. Well, nobody wants to work with that guy. So that's what I would say with parents. Start there, redefine these things, and seek positive relationships with people in your state homeschooling association, neighborhoods, and try to be a nice neighbor, a good, friendly person. And it will take time. You have to unlearn some things before you can actually truly learn something. And this is something called deschooling. Deschooling is the gap from traditional forced schooling to unschooling or homeschooling, this period of freedom. And it's kind of like if you have a Pepsi or a drink, you shake it up. Well, if you open the cap, it's going to go psh, and it's going to go have all this pressure. So you just want to ease that cap off the metaphorical mind of your child and let all that pressure release.
You're talking about for the kids or for the parents?
Well, for the kids primarily, but for the parents too. I mean, the parents got the most difficult challenge because they were schooled through the compulsory school system, and now they're doing something different. They've never done homeschooling before, so they're really afraid. But in terms of the child, let's say the child's 10 years old, so they've been going to school for 4 years, and for 4 years, they've been told you got to study, you got to do homework, you got grades and all these things. And, you know, my niece was so like stressed out. She was like really like having a difficult time. A lot of children are. So you have to let them know, relax, you're not going to have tests, you're not going to have homeworks and quizzes. This is your life. We're going to learn. We'll have a good time. You know, hopefully you identify a dream the next few years. And if not, maybe take 10 years. You know, I didn't find my dream till I was in my late 20s because it wasn't money. You know, I thought it was money, but I had to get out of that mindset because I'm already wealthy. You know, another thing I tell parents is that if there was a rich man and he needed your eyeballs, let's say he's a blind man and he needs to purchase both of your eyeballs, how much are you going to sell both your eyeballs for? $1 million? No, 5 million, 10. And I increased the price and I'm like, how about $1 billion? Would you sell both of your eyeballs for $1 billion? And they're thinking about it. And most people say no. I would say 99 people out of 100 say no. So I said, okay, in that situation, you have rejected $1 billion cash in order to keep your eyeballs. So that means in equity, you are a billionaire because value is subjective.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Beauty
that's just for one part of your body, right? What about your ability to enjoy your life or to think outside the boxes or, you know, there's more billions of dollars there, right?
Hey, how about the joy of tasting a fresh strawberry or a fresh peach? Right. I mean, that is like priceless. You would not sell your tongue for $1 billion.
There was this little, one of the Disney movies, which in spite of what Disney has become, some of them are kind of interesting, and it was called The Little Mermaid, I think, and she lost her voice. She was a great singer, right? And this evil sorceress took her voice away, and it was like that. There's no particular value that you can put on that stuff.
That's exactly right. So this also is one of the reasons I named my school Valor Academy, because the root word of valor is value. And so I tell all my students and parents, your son or daughter is valuable now. They're already valuable. And I share some of these stories with them. So they don't need to do anything. They're going to pass a test. They might got to jump through some hoop for the state. But in terms of me and you, Mom and Dad, I know they're brilliant. I know they're genius. So you have to believe that too. Or you don't have to. I would encourage you to open your mind and see the genius in them because it is there. They say the average person uses 2% of their brain, and Einstein maybe used 5% of his brain. So it's like, what are we doing with all this extra brain capacity? We're just letting it sit there dormant. So that's what I would encourage mom and dad to do. The other reason I named my school Valor Academy is because of courage. So valor, you at some point in life, we all have to be courageous, whether it's, you know, initiating contact with the opposite sex or doing a presentation or getting on the phone and making business calls or whatever it is. If we can be courageous, then almost every other goal we want to achieve is available to us because we're putting ourselves on a limb and going and achieving. So I think if young people and specifically parents, as they teach their kids, can help them realize that they're valuable the way they are. And what we're trying to help develop, one of the qualities is courage, is that valorous aspect. Then they can go out and they can go be independent. They can have a productive life and, you know, really be a happy adult and a happy child and teenager.
So you're talking about changing the archetype that is the model for the boys and the girls who are growing up. And even actually for the parents, even though they're already older, they can change their model of what they're trying to emulate in their life, right? Because like if you look at the whole system, you were kind of saying that it's all designed to create a certain kind of obedient people who can't think and have no self-awareness, especially, and stuff like that. And you look at Hollywood as a symbol of all the programmed entertainment we get, the archetypes that they're pushing for everybody to look up to are all killers. They're not people who really think about things, what they're killing for or who they're killing. It's just if they're the fastest killer, even the women now, You know, the really heroic looking women, they all have machine guns, and they're killing people as fast as possible, which makes you know that they're the hero. And you're suggesting, well, maybe there's more to the archetype that could happen than just that.
That's right. And so many, they don't read much, and because they dislike reading in schools is what I found out.
Yeah.
And so they just consume this content. And another point is that a lot of our values and beliefs and decisions are made by our subconscious mind. You know, we have a conscious mind, but then behind us, all these involuntary functions, breathing, the heart, all these, you know, calculations in our mind. The subconscious mind is so powerful as well. So these movies, the music industry, they get into our subconscious mind and put a lot of lenses, a lot of biases on us, whether it's conscious or not. And then soon people don't even realize why they're, you know, afraid to go in the dark, because they've watched movies where killers hide in the dark, and they're just so scared to be in that real situation. But it's all imaginary, and this is what they realized, you know, years ago. 150, 200 years ago, they knew the human imagination was the gift. And that's why Albert Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge just shows you what is, and imagination shows you everything which isn't, which is available in all of the human mind and experience. So we want to help encourage the growth of imagination, the expression and development of creativity, because that's what's going to allow us to grow as a human species. And then your child, your son or daughter, as they grow that imagination, then you become closer with them, and, you know, be able to empathize with them, and you see yourself in them, and it's like, oh, this is the full circle. And one of the other parts of it was that young people are so eager to learn if they have a safe mentor. And this is where, if, like you mentioned before, the kind of going full circle with the one-room schoolhouse, I just wanted a mentor growing up. I didn't know that's what the term was, but effectively I wanted somebody who could say, hey, this is how it works, little guy. You know, come show me, or I'll show you how it works, and, you know, we work together, and this will be a relationship. Well, that's the mentor, the apprenticeship relationship, which has been around forever, as far as I can determine, where you just spend time with an expert, with a professional, and in exchange, they get a volunteer and maybe carry in their bags or clean their house or mow their lawn or whatever they ask. And what you get is knowledge. You get to be around that expert, that professional, and get to see how they live, what they think about, and how they make decisions.
Yeah, it's a real different perspective than, you know, you look at the Beatles song Maxwell Silverhammer, right? And he was, Maxwell was being told to write on the blackboard 100 times, I will not be so, whatever it was. And it's just what this discipline idea, that they actually use discipline to be synonymous with subject, meaning that every subject is really unpleasant and it's really hard and you're going to be really unhappy while you're doing it. But then, you know, you can dominate other people when you're done. So it's worth going through and losing all the enjoyment. And you're proposing kind of a different model, right? Yep,
absolutely. So rather than have to have drudgery going through learning and associate, you know, boringness with books and like unexciting things. Well, what Gatto says, he says work is the salvation. You know, like even if you have a lot of money, let's say you have $10 million in the bank, you still got to do something with this life force. There's still something to do. And one of the other courses that was really helpful taught me what was missing from your childhood. So just speaking to the parents out there, what was missing from your childhood? Well, that is something that doesn't have to be missing from your child's childhood. You can fill in the gap there and show them that there are caring people or mentors, or you wanted to dance more, you wanted to play more, you wanted to go, you know, swimming or whatever you wanted to do. Wherever was missing from your childhood is an indicator of something which you should pay attention to, because we do have that inner child inside of us. You know, we're in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, but we all are just kind of young kids at heart. You know, our body ages, but we blink. I can remember being, you know, 15 or 10 years old. You know, it's not that long ago.
10 minutes ago. And if you give your kid permission and support to do what you just said, maybe the kid is going to share it with you. It doesn't have to be too late for the old people, right?
So true. And the kids so often are the teachers.
Yeah, exactly. They always have been. And this thing you just brought up about work is really interesting, because people are taught in the current society and school system and everything that work is going to be horrible, but you do it so that you can have a few minutes to do something you like before you have to go back into the horrible part again. And you have the weekend, by which point the average person is so wiped out that all they think of to have fun is get drunk or something like that. Do some form of drug, whether it's a physical drug or a mental drug or some addiction to some weird behavior or something. They're so out of touch with what work really is, which you were kind of alluding to. What work really is play. It's just that sounds so bizarre to people that have been taught the opposite.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And since work is such an important part of life, you might as well enjoy it. And it's not like kind of change your mind to say, I like digging ditches as you're digging a ditch. But it's like, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do with your time? That was a question I didn't hear until I was in my 20s. And I'm like, I don't know. I need to think about that. So That's why I ask a lot of my students that question, what is the dream? And most of them don't have one because they went through the public school system. But I said, start thinking about it. Start thinking about what if you had all the money in the world, you had all the time in the world, what would you do today? What would you do tomorrow? Because if you can find that joy of expression, that joy of relating, the joy of whatever it is, maybe it is building houses, maybe it is building something else or doing art or creating of some kind.
Right.
Then if you just keep doing that, in 5 years and 10 years, you'll be an expert. And then people will come to you and they'll say, wow, Richard, you're great in this area. I'd like to learn. You say, okay, there's a fee. I'll teach you how to do it. Here's my teaching fee.
Right.
And then you can make money.
And even if you're starting, there's so much that this is tied to. One of the guests we had on recently brought up the statistic that in America, and it's probably true in a lot of other places, especially westernized countries, but other places too, that 90-some% of the people in America hate their jobs, the ones that are working. And the ones that are dependent on the government, they have other things that they're unhappy with. And that's killing their incentive too. But even if you're starting digging the ditch or working in the cubicle office or whatever you're doing, if you change the attitude, it leads to other kinds of changes and things coming up that you didn't know were possible, I suspect, right? Mm-hmm. You may not be trapped there permanently, but, so that the person in a job they don't like can start by realizing what they are free to do, which is change their attitude. And that's going to make them feel different instantly. But on the other side, I'd like to see some assistance that we could put together somehow to not change the idea of the free market, doing whatever you want to make your living and stuff like that, but somehow connect the money to projects that are really good, that help yourself, other people, the ecosystem around you, which is the life support system. And I want to see large amounts of money get connected with projects that are really great. And whatever we can come up with for that, I think would be, a way to further what you're saying so that it's not just a few people getting it, but I don't want to see the vast majority of adults hating what they're doing for work. So,
I don't either. Yeah, I think if you're happy doing what you're doing, then you're going to give out better energy. You're going to be joyful and give, other people, happiness. And unfortunately, people, they don't know it exists, right? They don't know that you can follow your passion. You can do what you love and make money because of what they learned in the school systems. However, there is communities that are growing, and Anarchapulco is one of them. This year, there's going to be over 3,000 people down there, and I was there at the first one, 150 people. But there's, Bitcoin, there's other cryptocurrencies and blockchain technologies which create wealth. And there's even a website called steemit.com. That's STEEMIT.com. You can write articles. And if people like it, for example, like on Facebook, you get likes and comments, Steemit, you get cryptocurrency. You actually get paid for writing a good article or making a good video. and then you can convert that into Bitcoin, spend Bitcoin, or convert that into cash. So there are these exciting technologies. So we really are living during amazing transformational times with the internet, with cryptocurrencies, the blockchain technology in general, which can't be shut down. And one of the speeches I heard from Jeffrey Tucker, he said the blockchain is a new type of property. It's not private property and it's not public property. It's this kind of mixture between, because when you have information on the blockchain, it's in the public domain. It's visible for everybody to see, but nobody can take it away. So it's this new type of property, and he said it's going to change the way we do stuff. We're not going to need the third party. I think, that's why the government comes in, because they're the neutral third party when it comes to escrow or the police or the courts, right? All these coercive, violent gangs of thugs and just institutionalized violence. So then you'll start to see solutions arise that are on the blockchain, which is a public domain, and how Bitcoin gets rid of the bank. Because if I want to send you some Bitcoin, I just say, hey, Richard, what's your wallet address? I scan the QR code and I send it to you. It didn't go through Bank of America. It didn't go through Chase. It didn't go through these banks. It went directly to you. So I think the crypto space is really untapped, I think, still with capital and looking for good ideas. So I'm exploring that also. And, I think maybe in the future that'll be one of the funding sources if I choose to take on capital for, the scaling up of my schools and my educational business, because they want to help. They truly want to help get people free from the schools and from this prison or slave system, as it seems to be.
So you mentioned Anarchapulco. What is that, and why don't you tell people your understanding of what anarchy is, because I assume anarchy is connected to Anarchapulco, and most people see anarchy as the crazy people in black costumes that go blowing up stores and stuff like that. So what are those two things, anarchy and Anarchapulco? What's it about?
Yeah, so anarchy goes to the Greek word, which is anarch, which is without rulers. So all anarchy is, we just don't want a ruler. I don't want to be ruled. I don't think you want to be ruled. And I think the more accurate term or less emotionally charged term is voluntarism. So it's just voluntarism, and it's just based on voluntary relationships. We're not going to force you to do anything. Don't force us to do anything. You're not my ruler. I'm not your ruler. That's really what it is. Everything's based on voluntary relationships. There's a principle called the non-aggression principle. I won't aggress against you. You won't aggress against me or my property. And the only reason violence is justified or accepted is if it's in self-defense. Mm-hmm. So other than that, we'll have verbal contracts. If we want to engage in business or engage in some kind of relationship, we can have verbal contracts, or we can have a written contract. In the contract, we can list out the conflict resolution. We can put out, if we get in a dispute about this agreement, then we can have this third party, and it doesn't have to involve the government at all. So this is why the word anarchy, in my view, is the kryptonite to the state. It's the Achilles heel to that mafia of thugs, because that's why they associate anarchy with chaos. So it's always anarchy and chaos. But in reality, anarchy is just no rulers. So they say, oh, you have to have rulers or else there's going to be chaos. Anarchapulco is an event that's been around since 2015, and it's just about coming together to talk about peaceful solutions to these problems. And the first year, I'll never forget, I've gone each year since it started. There's a great artist called Rob Hustle, and he made an epic viral video called Call the Cops. And in that video, music video, he shows probably about 50 different scenarios of peaceful people getting beat, getting run over by cars, getting murdered on video, and nothing happens to these cops. Just like Rodney King in '93, I think it was, all those cops, 5 cops on video beating this poor Rodney King, those cops got acquitted too. So it's like, why is it okay for 5 thugs to beat a peaceful person? It's not okay. So at Anarchapulco, we explore different solutions to the state, the police, the financial system, the schools, the medical system, like everything that the state gets into, basically they turn it sour. They turn it into a monopoly of force and coercion. And we're just tired of it. Like for me, the wake up was when Ron Paul got the election stolen from him in 2012. I thought he was our hope and savior. He's championed the Constitution. Yeah. And he's a great man. I truly do have a lot of affection for that man, and he's a courageous guy, and I appreciate him. And so when I saw how the media treated him, it's like, how are you going to pretend this guy doesn't exist when he keeps winning these CPAC polls and he's like constantly like winning, but he doesn't exist. So once I saw the media was corrupted, I thought, I'm not going to waste my life trying to vote in certain people and say, hey, you go represent me. I'm going to take a look in the mirror and say, hey, I'm going to represent me, and I have to know what I want. And if I want something, I'm going to go call them up, or I'm going to send an email, and I'm going to say, hey, here's what I want. Here's what I'm going to give for you, right? This is the quid pro quo, where I give something and receive something, right? Creating a win-win outcome, as Stephen Covey talks about. And if we focus on win-win outcomes, I mean, we don't need these coercive organizations to say, oh, without us, you guys are safe. No, that's not it, because before the government, there were still roads. Before the government, there was still peace. And there's always going to be some violent, vigilante type guys that don't have any morals or don't care about other people. Right. But the free market deals with that. It's called ostracization, where you ostracize mean people or you ostracize violent people. And, there's other ways to deal with it too. I don't promote violence, but if somebody's aggressing against an innocent person, then you're justified to defend yourself lethally if you need to. If you feel your life is threatened, then, it's up to you and your creator or whatever someone's, beliefs are. But if I feel like I'm going to get killed or murdered, then don't I have a right to defend myself? I mean, I don't need the government to say, oh, you now have a license to have a gun. Right. That's the other thing in California. It's like
it's difficult in California. Yeah. I know I had a concealed carry permit for a long time there, but it was really hard to get because they assume that you need a special reason. You almost have to show that you were already killed, to make it worthwhile. But one of the main questions connected with that is if you have anarchy, if there's great consciousness in society, I think it would be the natural system, and everybody would be supportive of each other. But in a situation where that's not true, like the current world, for example, even if you got rid of all the official governments somehow, there are groups that are not called official governments that are at least as nasty as the governments and at least as violent. And I can see how people with a lot of resources, and maybe they can hire their own protection and security and stuff like that privately, they think, well, what's the problem? You can just do it on the free market. But all the people that have almost no resources, what prevents them from becoming victims in a place where you have really prolific, malevolent groups, very powerful gangs that can pretty much do what they want and enforce it with violence? What happens with that?
Yeah, I think if you take a look at the model, which is in Detroit, Michigan, called the Threat Management Center, they've been around for 20 years. And the founder, Dale Brown, very wise person and great man.
We had him on the show, by the way. He was really good. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, so I actually went out and visited him a few years ago. He spoke at my conference also. But I asked him about some of these questions, and he has a program called the DECA program. And what that is that any of his clients can call him if they're having a dispute. The call, I think, is $10 for the call, and then it's $10 for 10 minutes for them to mediate the problem. So if there's a violent person or whatever it is, somebody's on their property or whatever it is. So in one altercation, it might be $20 or $30, $40 to get some professional help. And he's been doing this for 20 years, and so I've talked with him and tried to encourage him to franchise as soon as he can.
Yeah. Private police force that is doing a business.
Correct. And he even strays away because he went through the whole last 20 years dealing with humans. And he's like, yeah, I would have like 30 or 40 employees, and they'd have, these guys would get together and like they would create a gang inside their own little forest, and they have like secret handshakes. You know, they're wearing all the military grub, and he said I would fire 20 of them at a time and say, this is not a gang. You're here to protect the clients, serve humanity. And he has some really great ideas. One's called the anti-kill philosophy, and that is you treat the client like it was your brother. Right. So unlike the police who, you know, shoot first and ask questions later, right? You wouldn't shoot at your brother first. You would say, hey buddy, what's going on? You know, you'd kind of.
So this is love your neighbor as yourself applied to business.
Correct. Right. That's right. And that's what he's about, and that's why he's, you know, has really good results. And he has a boat. He's got motorcycles, Hummers, but a lot of it is kind of imaging and branding, kind of setting that strong image. But deep down, you know, he's a really kind, loving guy. You know, if you allow me to say that about you, Dale, like he's really a nice human.
I think he is. Yeah.
Yeah, and he does want to protect people. So that would be the model, and the price would go down. And just like there's homeowners association where everybody spends $40 a month, you know, and the house, the complex gets painted every few years. I went on patrols with him, and he was patrolling nice neighborhoods. And I was asking about that. He's like, oh, yeah, we do random patrols around here. They don't trust the police because police take forever. But when they call us, we're there. So I think, yeah, definitely there would be some time of disruption. Like if all state organizations, let's say the dollar crashed and they couldn't pay their employees. However, the state is the mafia. You know, you've maybe heard of child protection services or medical kidnapping. You know, if you don't vaccinate your kid or, you know, some problem at school, it's like.
Or
you know,
sometimes if you refuse chemotherapy or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, we don't want to put poison in our child because they're sick. We want to use maybe CBD oil or some other method. There's hundreds of methods out there, you know, according to Dr. Leonard Coldwell, I think his name is. All these different cancer cures out there. And so they are the mafia. That's the problem. And one of the key points is that if the police come after you, you basically just put your hands up, because if you make a quick move, these guys are trained to kill you. And they can have it on video as that music video depicts. You know, this is what happens when you call the cops. They can have it on video getting killed, even if you're mentally ill, and nothing's going to happen to these guys. So you got to be strategic. You're dealing with psychopaths generally. I don't want to, you know, broad stroke the entire, you know, police department or school or government people in general. I got family members working in government, but many of them have been dehumanized themselves, so they think their badge or their training gives them ownership over you. You know, you have to obey me because I say so.
Well, and, even if the vast majority of people in jobs like police are really great, if you have 1% that are really homicidal, it's enough to change the situation.
Correct. And I would say it's probably maybe 50-50, maybe, you know, who knows what it is.
I think it varies by community.
That's true.
But the big question is the need for protection against the current evil, whether it's in or out of government. And I think when they were first thinking about what to do with the federal government in the U.S., with the idea that, you know, they had the Declaration of Independence and things saying that your rights come from God and that you're born with them, not from government, and that freedom and private property and mutual respect and live however you want as long as you don't hurt other people intentionally. That was the basis that was agreed on, but they were thinking things like not just for the neighborhood, but for the country. What if we do start a country based on freedom and there's a country next door that has a little bit different attitude, and they think if you show weakness, we're going to come and take over your property and, you know, invade your country. And there are huge groups like that. Sometimes religious, where they're doing it for God, sometimes just because they want what you have. And they felt like a united, you know, government, which they were really worried might become criminal itself, but they couldn't see a way not to have it because they knew they could be invaded by this huge force. And if they were all individuals, they wouldn't be able to prevent that. And that was one of the justifications for forming the original federal government by people who mostly believed in freedom. So if you're going to think of a way around that, I think it would be great, but it has to be practical. I mean, how do you deal with things like national invasions, which are happening right now all over what used to be Europe and actually into the U.S. as well, from people that are not into freedom at all. They're into you being eliminated so that they get what you have. We have to come up with an idea that is in concert with total individual freedom that would be like also not just community but national protection until the world is nice.
Yeah, no, that's the big question, national security, and I'm still learning about the solutions there. However, I think if people would join in voluntary alliances, this is one way, and I think this is kind of what the Constitution was talking about, having a militia, which is basically, a neighborhood, like, okay, you live here, I live here, and it's like, okay, you got some guns, hey, if something goes down, give me a call, let's go protect our homes, protect our families.
Right.
Whereas they did not want standing armies, and standing armies are on salary, right? They're making money.
Didn't they say that it could never have a standing army for something like more than 2 years or something?
Yeah, I don't know the exact term, but I do know that they saw standing armies as the threat. And, the reason one group would try to take over another group is generally for the resources. So this is like the tax base. Yeah. So they would seize the tax, receipts, and that's attractive. Whereas a totally decentralized society that doesn't pay taxes, what are they going to do? They're going to have to fight us.
Well, and there was a statement, I don't know personally if it's true or not, but the Emperor of Japan, when Pearl Harbor was happening, was saying we don't really invade the mainland because everybody's armed. It wouldn't be worth it.
Right. That's right. I think he said there's a gun behind every blade of grass.
That's the militia. That's the real meaning of the militia, basically.
Right.
But you have to have the character. You've got to have the people who are in it, who are, able to defend people. They have to be motivated by, like Dale Brown. They have to want to protect people, not show how tough they are.
True. Yep, you're right. And I think as people like Dale Brown and other people come to the forefront and demonstrate, hey, you can still be a masculine man, and still have emotion and still love and still care deeply. Right. Again, you go into the archetype of these superheroes of, they take bullets and they don't feel and they don't have any fears or worries.
No, and there's never a gray area. It's always the bad people, and they only kill the bad people, right? So that's why they can still be a hero. And there has to be a new archetype, because right now we're being trained through the media that either you don't defend yourself and you just want to be completely helpless and then you're a good person, or you believe in protecting anybody or yourself even, and you're bad. You're the cause of what they call gun violence, right? And there's no other dimension where you're strong and you want to protect people, but you don't have malice. It's like, I think what you're doing is involved in creating that new archetype.
Yeah, that's the goal, to help people realize you can still be strong and loving. And it comes down to, I think, understanding that where your rights come from. This is why I think the Declaration of Independence is so powerful, where it says your rights come from your creator, and whether you believe in a god or aliens or nothing at all, whatever created us or our humanity is where our rights come from. So, like, for example, when I spoke at an event in Sacramento on the steps of the Capitol about the homeschooling bill, which they defeated, and I was speaking what every parent needs to hear about this is that your rights don't come from the government, like the right to homeschool. Wow. So, I mean, it really is getting to the point where you got to tell people, even if this bill passes, it doesn't mean anything. It is a piece of paper that a few guys in this building back here, they say how you have to raise your child, but they don't know your child, they don't love your child, they didn't give birth to your child, they didn't pay for everything. Like, they have no right at all your rights to raise this lovely human, this being, comes from your humanity and the fact that you love them and you know them. So at some point, I think there's going to be a decision where people have to choose to comply with the state, whatever issue it is, or to just say, no, thank you. I prefer not to.
What was the bill going to do?
It was going to allow firefighters or the fire department to come inspect your home for homeschooling to make sure there was no fire hazards in your house as a homeschooler. And it's like, okay, there's never been a fire hazard before in homeschoolers. So it's basically called the incrementalism, right? The boiling frogs, little by little, they creep, and then it's pretty soon you're engulfed.
Yeah, because pretty soon they could inspect what you're feeding the kids to make sure there's enough GMOs in the food and stuff like that, or that you have injections for the kids of all the required poisons and stuff like that.
Right. Yep. And there was another one after it, I think it didn't pass also because there are people getting together, but it was basically saying if your child's not getting a quality education, then the state can intervene. If your child's not getting quality nutrition, the state can intervene. Yeah, and these are all vague terms.
What was that? The rights of the child or something, wasn't it?
Yes, the Children's Bill of Rights. That's what it was.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I mean, great. Kids finally have rights. Like rights to go live with CPS forever and stuff like that.
Oh man, get put in the pipeline. And that's what's so important for people to think about too, is that when they name the bill something, you can bet most likely it's the opposite.
Yeah, it's really good guidance, actually. You can go by the name as long as you reverse it.
Yep. The National Defense Authorization Act, 2011.
That sounds not just good, it sounds necessary.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, they can just haul you away, no judge, no jury, no phone call, no lawyer, if they deem you an enemy combatant or domestic terrorist.
So if the government gets to start defining words, that leads to other things, right? Because, like, for example, people that are coming out of the compulsory education system, they tend to be easily fooled by words and definitions. And everybody is against... They want everybody to be nice and not hate anybody. So it's quite obvious that the government needs to prevent and criminalize hate speech, right? Because who is in favor of hating anybody? And the problem with that is that as soon as they define what the hate speech is, it's everything that forms dissent to the current policy, right? That was done in the Soviet Union a lot. And you get sent to a mental ward or to a labor camp or something just because you're such a bad person and we're obviously hating everybody.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then you feel afraid to say what you really feel. You feel afraid to speak the truth, so then you can't communicate because you aren't speaking the truth, nobody's hearing the truth, everybody's in fear, and then they can just pick off people. And I think that's why the political correctness is such an alarming part of society right now. Like, you should say whatever the fuck you want, excuse me, and whether it offends people or not, we have to express ourselves. We have to say it so that people can, be offended or not. Like, you have a right to speak. Your voice matters. You have a life. It matters. And if you feel something, then you can say it. But, you want to be respectful for humans, but of course not making threats or libeling or slandering people. Right. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about like gender pronouns. You can be arrested in California, I think, for using the wrong ones. They're leading the way in that area. But the free market is not just money; it's ideas too, right? So, and it's speech. So there's no free market if there's words that you can't say, ideas that you can't talk about, and which is exactly where it's going. I mean, what used to be Europe and England are ahead of us this way, just like California is leading the nation, but they're putting people in jail for using the wrong words now commonly and talking about ideas that you're not allowed to talk about. So I think it's thanks to education, that people learn, free speech is okay as long as it's government approved ideas, and that it has to be free for things that you don't agree with, or it's not free, right? That's right. Yeah, the government says you can play in this little box right here, Richard, but if you get outside of this box, now you're a bad guy, you're an evil person, and so we have to take you away or lock you up. But it's like, I didn't make any threats. What I'm talking about is a world where people just engage voluntarily. Oh, you're talking about anarchy and chaos. No, we just don't want to be ruled. We don't want to be ruled by you. And I think that's why the term has been demonized so much, because it is their kryptonite. And once the people realize we're just humans, and if you've traveled much, which I think you may have, I've traveled a little bit, but everywhere I go, people are pretty nice. Of course there's some mean people, but people are generally friendly. They're not trying to force me to do stuff. And it's normally the government agents who pull me over and try to take my money and give me citations and say I got to get permission to travel and all these things. Like, private people pretty much leave us alone. So it's we got to be able to speak our minds.
There are some big non-government groups that will kill you if they get a chance, and I'm not going to say the name of them, of one of the big ones right now, so we don't get thrown off our channel. But in Europe, this is a big problem, and there was a couple you may have heard of, man and woman, who were saying exactly what we just said, that everybody is basically good people, which is true, but they're subject to programming, and some of them, the programming's pretty nasty. And they rode all through Central Asia, and they had a group of people who just ran them over for religious reasons and just killed them. And there are, aspects like that in the current world where it's not everybody being nice to each other. And so I really think it's important, in order to give this voluntarism a good chance, to look at all these practical challenges and come up with ways creatively to deal with them. Mainly protecting people that don't have any defense.
Right. Yeah, I think everything is going to go towards a decentralized type solution. And rather than say, hey, everybody's got to do it this way, I think as a free society, as free people, we just do it our way and do it in a way that's demonstrative to other people, say this is how it works, and then kind of go from there. But I learned a while back, and always relearning, I can't change people, right? I can care for people, I can love people, I can demonstrate and be a model, but I can't say, hey, live your life this way, because we all have our human nature, and so people seem to be most influenced by a model, by an example.
Right, and so you can change people, just not by force, because whoever you are is changing people because they're influenced by you.
Right.
And it also strikes me that, you were talking about the rights coming from God or from nature, or whatever you believe, but they belong to you. They're not a gift from the government. Well, if that's true, and I think it is, that means a few things. It means it doesn't matter if your country has a Declaration of Independence. If you're living in a communist country or some other type of tyranny where they tell you everything you can and can't do, you actually have the same rights as a country that recognizes your freedom. And it also means, people have said the Constitution only prevents government from going against it. That's really not true if the Declaration of Independence is included. Because if everybody has rights for these freedoms that you're born with, then nobody can really legitimately trespass on those, right?
100%. And this
not
is
just
why
government.
That's
companies, corporations,
Right. My right to my person, my right to my privacy is something that's mine. And I was born this way. It's not something that somebody gave me. And this is why, like flying with the TSA and going to the airport, and, I'll tell these guys, I opt out every time. I don't go to the body scanner, and then they pat me down. I'm getting pat down, and I say, there's other ways to make money, man. You don't have to violate people's privacy rights to make money. And I try to be nice and humane to them, but it's like, these people are rubbing my genitals because they are thinking they're protecting freedom, but I got to let them know you're violating me right now. Like, this is not okay. And they say, well, you can go out the gate over there. You don't have to fly. It's a privilege to fly.
Right. any kind of traveling. In fact, that's what they did with driving, because originally, and you probably know all about this, but there were no driver's license originally required when people started operating vehicles. And they defined a term called driving, which was actually a commercial use of the highways. And they made a license for that and then told everybody else, you're all driving. But actually they weren't. It's just twisting words like that. Like
yeah, I did hear about that. And I did try to, consider going down that route to do that. I heard of another guy who put on his license plate, not for hire. And when he gets pulled over, they say, well, your driver's license, I'm not driving. You're not? I'm traveling in my car.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, he's right, but you have to choose where you want to put your time. Because if you're going to get pulled over and have to explain that every 20 minutes, and you can't live the rest of your life, practically, which way do you want to go?
That's right.
You know, it's tricky because idealistic people want to say, wait, I just found out the whole driver's license thing is a scam. But then if they get into it, they have to give up the rest of their life to deal with it.
That's right. Yeah. I just tried to defeat this speeding ticket recently and use the techniques that Mark Stevens talks about on YouTube. And he does get some successful results and some not. Yeah. But it was interesting because every time I pay the fine, $300 or $400 or $500, okay, you steal my money and okay. But I was like, I'm going to try this. I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, I want to see these guys really just expose the violence and coercion that they are. And so I did. And the question which he teaches you to ask is, where is the evidence that your Constitution and laws apply to me? And they say, oh, well, they apply because we say they apply.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, that's an assertion, but do you have any evidence? And so the cop was there and I asked him and he didn't have any evidence. And the judge is, of course, on the cop's side. And ultimately he just said, I know we have jurisdiction in this case, is what he said. And I said, okay, great, but do you have any evidence here? No, you don't. As Lysander Spooner talks about, is that if a government was legitimate, then they would have, signed, sealed, delivered, approved, and recognized documents. But this is just like you and me and, 50 guys getting together and saying, okay, Richard, what do you think the rules should be for, all this hundreds of millions of people? All these are what the rules should be. Okay, you guys agree? Yep. Okay, we signed. Okay, all you guys are bound by these laws that we just agreed to. It's like, that's what you agreed to. That's not the consent of the governed. Yeah. So it's liberating to realize these things. And so I lost. I got to pay this money in fines, but I think there will be a way around it. But just seeing basically the velvet glove come off the iron fist to see, there's nice people in the government, but these guys, when it comes down to it, they know what they're doing. At least the judge did, because he was stumbling around and couldn't do anything. And I was starting to get a little bit directly conversational in the courtroom. And then the bailiff says, you better cut it out or I'm going to handcuff you or arrest you. And I was like, all right, I'll ease up. But I had to let you guys know, like, you got the gun. There's a cop behind me who's got the gun. You guys got the power. I just want to let you know I know that. I see that. I'm not going to try to, go too far up the line. I want to live. I have a life to live. But you guys are the coercive ones. You guys are the bullies, not me, because I went 80 miles per hour in a 65 zone that you just arbitrarily said was the law, where in Germany there's like roads that have no speed limit and they have no problem, with accidents over there.
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I think ultimately you're going to have to change the consciousness of the people within the system. And it's like what we said a minute ago. You can't do that by just telling them to change. But the power of who you are, I think it actually has the ability to do that. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I think all these things are kind of being addressed by your academy work, and also you're cooperating with Anarchapulco, right, for this meeting to encourage people to be creative. If people want to get involved in either of those things, what do they do?
So one is I have a free Facebook group called Homeschool Leader, which I train parents to homeschool. Join me on there. Valor Academy, you can email me at info@thevaloracademy.com. I I can help your teenager graduate early. I can even help him or her transition to the community college or finding apprenticeships. I have a talk on YouTube called How to Find Apprenticeships, which I speak about the methodology for about 20 minutes at my expo. And then for Narcapoco, what I can offer you is you can get 10% off the tickets. If you use the code VALOR, VALOR, you'll get 10% off. I did hear out of the 3,000 tickets, 1,500 have already sold. So I think we'll probably sell out in maybe a month or so. The hotel is going to be all sold out, so I would not delay. I don't know when this interview is going to be uploaded, but I would not delay. It's going to be awesome. It's right on the beach. It's a 5-star hotel. The rooms are probably $100 or $110 a night. You can get 2 queens or a king. You can share it with a friend. There's also a Facebook group called Narcapoco Roommates. You can meet really cool people and room up. They're going to have sites on the beach, I think. So if all the rooms sell out, you can camp on the beach. But it's just a lovely place, and I would recommend anybody who's interested in freedom, in cryptocurrency, and having a good time, and actually finding solutions to these problems. Because, Richard and I just talked for, an hour or two, but imagine 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. I'm hoping to go down for a week or two, maybe longer, so I can be there. I feel more free in Acapulco. There's no cops running around trying to give me tickets, and, there's not a last call for alcohol. You can just drink whenever you want and nobody cares as long as you're being peaceful. You're not being a bully, right? We're not saying you can go out and be a jerk to people, which some people do when they drink, but we're not recommending you do that. But you have a good time. You're going to be safe in this place. And it's just very inspiring to see people talk about these ideas. We're talking about the political correctness here in the U.S. and California. Imagine a place where you don't have to worry about that. You can actually express the feelings that you have, the ideas, the fears, maybe some business ideas. Maybe you want to find a collaboration with a coder or a marketer down there. It's going to be an epic event. It really is. So I hope everybody listening to this comes and checks it out. It's going to be really fun, and those are some ways to get in contact with me. And yeah, I also should mention, this is the book that I published with John Taylor Gatto. I was the editor and publisher of that one. This is volume 1. I got Ron Paul on the foreword, and we go through. He has 10 new essays in this book.
Let's say the complete title for the radio people who may not be able to see that.
The Underground History of American Education.
Okay.
Volume 1, subtitle, An Intimate Investigation into the Prison of Modern Schooling. And this is the book that's been out of print for 15 years, and we just got it out last year.
Wow.
And really exciting, great information in there. Check out John Taylor Gatto's YouTube channel as well. He's on Twitter at Real John Gatto. I'm on Twitter at Principal DJR. It's Principal David James Rodriguez. On Instagram, The David James Rodriguez. And reach out to conversation. We all have a lot of unlearning to do, including myself. There's deep programming. However, if you connect with people, as you and I have, Richard, really enjoyed the conversation, and people in your audience, and people in Narcapoco, people at other events, share the ideas and realize there's other people who realize the funny world we're living in, the matrix of coercion and force, and there are solutions out there. So hopefully together we can build them, inspire the young generation to help build and lead us, so that when we're old and 120 years old, or however old we make it, that we'll be confident in the next generation to spread peace, freedom, and love.
And Acapulco is also going to be talking, some people down there will be talking about unschooling, right?
Yep. The producer is Dana Martin down there, and I'm in communication with her about having a workshop. I think the workshop's going to be called Raising Free Children, or Raising Free Kids, something like this. And we'll be talking about the unschooling and talking about the apprenticeship model and the holistic view. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but homeschooling, unschooling, it's like a lifestyle, So it's not like something you do from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's like a way of living, a way of being. And as Dana says, everyone's needs matter. So whatever the problem you're facing in your family, hey, I have this concern, I have this need, and you have this concern and this need. So how can we work together? Because it's not like I'm the adult and you're the kid and I'm superior. you're equal with me. We are humans. I just have to be a little bit older, but it doesn't matter. Your needs matter too. So, yeah, she'll be talking about that. Ron Paul will be down there, Judge Andrew Napolitano, David Icke, Cynthia McKinney. Yeah, a lot of big names. And so that's why it's going to sell out here. So
David Icke, Ron Paul, who else did you say?
Judge Andrew Napolitano.
Oh, yeah, right.
Cynthia McKinney, Max Egan, Larkin Rose, of course, Jeff Berwick, the Dollar Vigilante.
Right.
And basically people that are doing stuff, they want to be part of the establishment. They want to be independent. A lot of entrepreneurs, self-employed people. And again, maybe if you're looking for a position or a job, make it a business trip if that's what you're looking for. You want to work with people that love freedom, work with people that are on board with the non-aggression principle. They're not going to force you to do anything, and you're not going to force them. I mean, this is exciting. I really enjoy working with these kind of people because we can really level up and have a great conversation as you and I did. Like, we really got to find solutions, and I don't have all the ideas. So I got to learn from people like you and help get the message out there. So it's been a really great time to connect with you and share some of these ideas with your audience.
What's the structure down there? You said like 5 days or so, right, for the whole thing?
It's February 14th to the 17th. So it's
4 days.
I think 4 days, and I'm still determining when the workshop will be, but if you can come down for a week, that would be great. But if you just come down for a few days, it's a weekend event.
And is there a whole bunch of stuff happening at the same time, so you choose which parts you want to go to, or is there an opportunity to see everything, or how does that work?
Yeah, so this year there's going to be 2 stages, I believe, and yeah, they'll have different workshops going on, but they try to offset it so that, there's going to be cryptocurrency at this time and, unschooling at this time. So, of course, you can't do it all when there's, let's say, slated to be 50 speakers or 60 speakers.
Right.
But you can get the live feed version, like the live stream version, and you can get those videos recorded later. Or you can go to their YouTube channel, Anarchapulco on YouTube, and they're uploading some of the speeches from this past conference in February. You can see some of the talks maybe you missed. So, yeah, what I would say is if you're going to come down there, just have some clear intentions, what you're looking for, some fun, some solutions, because you're going to be having a great time with everybody. So the time's going to go by. You're going to be able to have these conversations. It's going to feel like a 10-minute conversation because you're actually in alignment with somebody. Your vibrational frequencies are connecting. Yeah. And it's a miraculous time to be around other people that get freedom and don't want to force you to do stuff and just want to have a great human experience with love and joy.
You're talking about uploading past talks, right? Like, if for the people that can't go there in person, is there any way to get any of it electronically?
Yep, there will be live stream versions as well. That should be on the website. Okay. So, yeah, you can get the live stream version if you can't make it down to Acapulco. And
what website has that?
Anarchapulco.com.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, and they're on Twitter as well, Anarchapulco, Facebook.
Neat.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds great.
I encourage you to come, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing, and I think if the bottom line of it is just bringing back this idea that life is not what the system wants to call a discipline. It's actually incredibly energizing. Fun is not evil. It's actually the real nature of work when you get into it. And there's unlimited possibilities that all of us are supposed to be creating. So anyway.
I agree. Let's tap into the untapped potential and see what we can create today, next week, next year, and use technology to accelerate that and document it so that people behind us can, step on our shoulders and take it to the next level also.
Exactly. Okay. Well, let's stay in touch. That was a great discussion, and I hope everybody will go to the sites and stay in touch with what you want to do as well.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Richard. Yeah, we'll stay in touch, and we'll do it again, I hope.
Yeah, we will. And I'll be in touch with you shortly.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
See ya. Thanks. Bye, everyone. Bye.
See ya. Okay, so that was David Rodriguez, and really inspiring person that is just reminding us that education is not drudgery. It's not something where you get forced to give up your ability to think clearly. And what's happening in a lot of the public school system now, it's something super exciting. And it's not just for the kids, although his system will help with that. There's a lot of great homeschool teachers now. There's Dana Martin's work to become aware of, and I think she's easily found on YouTube and other parts of the internet. She'll be on the show shortly in live stream form as well. So I encourage everybody to look at Anarchapulco, see what's going on down there. Look at our recent live stream with Jeff Berwick, who's a great, inspiring teacher as well in his own way. And just bring back the quality of life is what we're talking about to the world. And we did talk about some really important points. For example, there are groups and individuals in the world that are not on board with all this stuff and just trying to be nice. And the people who got recently murdered in Tajikistan or wherever that was in Central Asia are an example of that to learn from, that you have to keep the spirit of beauty and the reality inside even the worst people. It's still there. But be conscious and aware, and defensive awareness does not ruin the enjoyment of the beauty that everybody actually is. And my interest is in changing even the people who want to destroy things and give them some different ideas in a more positive direction. And the only way I see that we can do that is by becoming what we really are, which is exactly what David's talking about. And if we do that, we're going to influence everybody, including the people that we can't even talk to directly. This is more powerful than that. So I really encourage you to follow your own education, starting immediately from a really magical, fun, exciting way, and energizing way. Even if you're stuck doing things that you don't necessarily like those things to do, put a different attitude in it. It changes the whole thing completely, immediately. Even helps your physical body. And we'll keep putting the free videos up on the various platforms as long as we can. Check out lostartsradio.com if you're already not familiar with the site. And if we get kicked off of some platforms, that'll tell where we still are, including Real.video and others. We'll keep that updated. And if you're interested in the club where we're working on more personal stuff and working on yourself and specific kind of support group environment, you can check that out at lostartsradio.com/club. But the main thing is what you do on your own every day, all day. And that's what you're transmitting to the world. And I just want to remind you that you're incredibly important as an individual, and the power that you've got for healing all of humanity and this place that we're in called the physical world is unlimited. And that's what education's about, is to discover it. So thanks for being with us. I really appreciate your letting us come and share some time with you. And we'll see you next time.